Hey everybody, this is Jim the Tabletop Engineer, and welcome to a new episode of Let's Paint a Mini. Today I'm actually just painting one. This is Fatima. She is one of the investigators from the Cthulhu Death May Die game. She's got quite a few number of colors in here, including gold. I don't have a gold in terms of speed paints, so I'm probably going to go back over those with actual gold acrylic paint once the paint dries. So while I'm painting this, as you know, I usually pick a topic and ramble on about it. And one of the topics the topic I'm gonna do today is one I actually just had with some fellow gamers the other day, and it was we were all just sitting around talking about this this situation with OGL and Wizards of the Coast and D&D, and we were just kind of going around talking about our thoughts on it and where we stand when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons and whether we're playing it and things like that. So I just, I figured I'd clear the air and tell you where I stand with it and how I feel about what Wizards is doing and or not doing. And so I'm going to go ahead and get started. And as usual, the first thing I'm going to do is paint her flesh color because that's going to be the hardest to get to as this piece gets developed. So first off, let me just go ahead and tell you that I've played Dungeons and Dragons since 6th grade, back in 1980. So I have played my share of Dungeons and Dragons, and I love the game, always will. Can't ever see myself bad mouthing it. It's just in a nutshell, what I'm going to talk to you about is really just how I've sort of grown out of it. D&D was a big part of my growing up in my middle school and part of my high school years. Played a lot of it and have no regrets. It was a great game. I was there. I started with the Holmes box, which is the one, the big, the blue. It's got the dragon on the front with the knight and the magic user, and that was the game I started with. And I moved on to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons after that. And from there, I kind of took a break from it. And I did play some 3.5 here and there. And I did play in college a little bit, but not as much as I probably now kind of wish I had stayed with it. But where I really picked up Dungeons and Dragons again was 5th edition. 2014, I heard, or I think it was around 2014, I heard that they were beta testing a new version and they were going to be coming out with it. I really wasn't interested in beta testing, so I just sort of bided my time and waited. And then when 5e was announced, I went out and bought I think it was the Player's Handbook that came out first. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure it was. And then I think it was the Monster Manual and then the DM's Guide. I may be wrong about the order. That was quite a few years ago, and it's not really important to this discussion. But it wowed me. I mean, I was like, wow, D&D has really progressed, and so I played for a very short period of time, and then I started DMing. I went to the coordinator of the organized play at my local gaming store, Titan Games and Comics. His name is Topher. And this is a shout out to Topher. Topher, I got to know him and finally said, "Hey Topher, I used to be a DM. It's been a while, but I think I'm ready to do it." And he graciously said, "Yes, we would love to have you as a DM." And so for probably, I don't know, right up until COVID, from about 2015, let's just say 2015, to 2020, was it? 2019? I can't recall. Whenever the gaming store basically shut down because of COVID, that was the last I played of 5e. I did do some online games, both as a player and as a DM. I was writing some adventures for Goodman Games, and I had some players online that I knew that were also doing similar things, writing, and so we sort of banded together and agreed to play test one another's stuff. And so I did continue to play 5e during COVID, but not near as much as I was playing pre-COVID. So COVID hit, and then COVID went, and the gaming stores started slowly bringing back the 5e games, but by that point, I had sort of, I don't know, I had sort of lost interest. That may not be the best way to say it, but I just wasn't really into Dungeons and Dragons anymore. Um, Between COVID and today, somewhere along the lines, I got introduced to Old School Essentials, which is a BX, basic D&D version. There is an advanced version of it, and I got into that, really got into that, and really enjoyed it, and I still do. And I've run quite a few games for players, and I've written quite a bit on OSC. As a matter of fact, one of the zines I produce is dedicated to old school D&D games. And so one of the things that really won me over with the OSC was it was really a flashback for me. It was getting back to a time period when it was all about dungeon crawls and torches burning out. How much could you carry into the dungeon and carry out before you really had to leave? How much damage could you take before it was time to call it quits and head back to the surface? And OSC really reminded me of all the fun times I had playing Dungeons and Dragons growing up. And for all practical purposes, when I play OSC, I am playing basic Dungeons and Dragons or advanced Dungeons and Dragons, depending on which rule set you're using. And it's very enjoyable. It's very nostalgic for me, and quite honestly, I enjoy it better than 5e because it's back to the basics. You don't have hundreds and hundreds of spells. You don't have dozens and dozens of classes to remember. And I'm speaking from a GM point of view, by the way. As a GM, my memory is not so great to begin with, but 5e was overwhelming me with all of the stuff that a GM had to sort of know or bring to the table. It was out of hand, in my opinion. I still believe it is. My players would come to the table and I'd say, okay, what are you playing? And they'd say, and I'm making this up, they'd make up some race, or not make up, they'd claim some race, some class that I just didn't have the books for, some third-party product. And even though we weren't supposed to be supporting third-party products because organized play was supposed to be all about the wizard stuff, most GMs were pretty cool about, hey, if that's what you want to play, we'll figure it out. And I would have players come with some of the weirdest combos, and some of these combos, you'd think that's a first-level character. They got like 24 hit points and armor class of 20, and I was like, there was no risk. The game had no risk to it. And all I can think of was just how many of my characters or my players' characters died when we were playing old school Dungeons and Dragons back in the day because, you just didn't get attached to a character. There were way too many ways to die. And it just got farcical. The way 5e was just so over the top with the powers and the feats and the abilities. Now, granted, this stuff existed because this is what players were asking for or wanting in the game, I guess. And because they asked for it, that's what publishers were delivering, third party and wizards. But all I could do was sort of grit my teeth and go, man, this is not the D&D I want to be playing. So I just stopped playing. I haven't looked back. I have played a number of OSC games. I'm actually looking at starting up a campaign at my local gaming store very soon and putting an open invitation to anybody who wants to try an old school game to come on out, sit down. And the nice thing about the old school is it's really up to me. I can have as many players at my table as I want. You could run a party of 15 if you wanted to. 5e, it just started getting bogged down and overkill when you had that many players. As a matter of fact, I don't think I ever recall having that many players at my table. But you could do it in an old school game. You really could have a lot. And sometimes you needed it because you'd send 15 in and only 5 might be coming out. That was just the name of the game when it came to old school. And so anyway, we were sitting around talking about 5e, And one of the questions was, are you going to play it anymore? What do you think? Well, my reason for not wanting to play D&D anymore isn't because of the OGL fiasco. But the OGL fiasco didn't hurt, or it didn't help Wizards' situation in terms of me. I, as someone who produces content, I produce content for Old School Essentials, and this new OGL was really going to mess things up for me as a creator, because I was including a license because that's what writing for Old School Essentials required. And if Old School Essentials was going to be threatened with existence, then so was my writing, my ability to create content and to make a paycheck. A lot of what I do is, I write content for other games. I'm not yet at the point, and I say not yet, I'm not yet at the point where I'm ready to release a game of my own. Hint, hint. It's coming. So what I'm doing is I am writing for other games, and I'm dependent upon them to be treated properly in the context of, the whole gaming community. And if they're not being treated properly, then I'm not being treated properly, because I'm writing for them. Now they are writing for Dungeons and Dragons or 5e or, name a game. But I just so happen to be writing for Old School Essentials, which is built on a license that Wizards was recognizing. So when Wizards pulls out this whole, well, we're not sure we're going to support it anymore, and you'll have to change over to this new license, and anybody who makes over a certain amount of money is going to have to report income and give us 25%. Well, when you're making a profit, but you're making enough profit to just stay alive, giving someone 25% is a big ask. So that didn't help their situation in terms of, me wanting to continue to write. Now, this has all been, at least at the current situation, this has all been resolved. Wizards has said, you know what, if you want to keep using 1.0a, knock yourself out. We're gonna continue with what we're doing, but you be you. And they seem to be okay with it. I say seem to be because a lot of people aren't 100% certain that Wizards isn't going to pull this stunt, and that's what we're calling it. They're not going to pull this stunt again and wait a year or two and then come out and hit everybody up with some hard and fast rules about what can and can't be used. For that reason, you've got all these new licenses that are being proposed. Like Pathfinder is talking about theirs is called ORC, O-R-C. I have not read enough to know what it is, but I am savvy enough and have read enough to know that competition is good. Multiple licenses, it cannot be a bad thing. Choice in the market is always a good thing. So do I think Wizards may pull this again? Yeah. Because I think what's going to happen is we're going to start seeing fragmentation of and other games growing in popularity and stealing some of D&D's thunder. And if that happens, then yeah, I think Wizards may have to circle the wagons and say, well, we're losing market share, or we're not where we were financially, back at this date. How are we going to fix that? And it may involve revisiting whether they're going to support other companies creating content for Dungeons and Dragons. Now, for me, honestly, I just really don't care, and I'll tell you why. Because I think 1D&D, this new version they're going to be releasing, that's all digital, and it's not all digital, but they're saying that there will be books released. Well, okay, sure, but we all know where they're going. They're going to microtransactions, and if you don't believe that, that's fine. But that is where D&D is going. They want to sell skins for their virtual environment where you will create your hero and then you will buy things to empower that. So you can create a basic free character, but if you really want to hang with the big boys, you're going to have to shell out money. That's the subscription model. It's what one of the execs at Wizards was pulled from, apparently. He was pulled from an app company that's what they were known for, is microtransactions, games that were making billions of dollars, and they were just riding it. They were milking it for everything they could. And you can't blame them. I mean, that's what a business is in business for. I'm in business. I have to make a profit to stay in business and to pay my bills. So I cannot fault Wizards for doing what they're doing. What I can do is say I'm worried about Wizards. I'm worried about the future of D&D because the crowd that is going to be playing Dungeons and Dragons, I believe, and I could be wrong here, but I am pretty sure that the crowd that is going to be playing one D&D or whatever it's called, one D&D 6.0, whatever you want to call it, that is going to be the generation that carries D&D into the future. And if they don't continue to play the game, D&D could very well die. The modern D&D could die, which will leave the old school games still playing until those of us who are playing them die off. And listen, I'm 54 years old. I don't feel my age. I definitely don't feel like my grandpa's 58. But, I'm getting up there. And there's going to come a day when I'm no longer around, or I'm no longer able to play Dungeons and Dragons. And my players will have to find an alternative game. I don't know how long I'm going to play. I see people playing it well into their 80s and 90s. So I'm going to play it as long as I can. But my point is that the D&D I know, the D&D I love to play, there's a specific audience that is playing it and no one else. And I think that's what's going to happen with this one D&D. It's going to have a following, but I worry what happens when they all get sick of the monetization, the micro commerce part of it, where they have to keep buying stuff to stay up with the latest, greatest. That's one of the reasons I've never gotten into Magic the Gathering. I don't like having to spend a fortune on cards every 2 to 3 months when a new deck comes out and they retire the old cards or tell you can't play with these cards anymore. Now, granted, that's what makes Magic sort of popular, I think, with a lot of people. They like that there is this constant rotation of cards. But to me, it's a never-ending heat sink. It's a never-ending sink of your money. And if D&D goes that route, well, I won't be playing D&D. And so far, that's the hint of where D&D is going, is the microtransactions. So let's say there's 40 million players. I think I always hear that number. Let's say there's 40 million players out there playing D&D. Where did I put with the red? Here it is. If they're going to stay with it and continue to play it, what percentage of them are playing D&D 1 or 1 D&D or 6.0 or whatever? I don't know. Wizards must have some numbers in mind because they're still going full forward with this virtual tabletop world, and they've sunk a lot of money into it, so they're not going to go backwards on it. They have committed themselves. So I'm just curious, what percentage of players are going to play this game? If I'm playing a VTT table, a virtual one, and it's limited to, whatever's programmed in there, the spells, the actions, or whatever, you're basically limited to what the programmers have given you. If in a real D&D game at the table, I say my dwarf is going to climb up and swing on the chandelier and get enough momentum to do a backflip and land on the back of the ogre's neck and try to throttle him. Well, you can do that at the table. Can you do that in a virtual environment? Only if the programmers have given you that ability. And I don't see that. You're not going to have the freedom of motion, the freedom of movement, the freedom of action that you have at the table when you're doing theater of the mind, or even just using minis. Because even with minis, the DM can say, oh, you're going to do a backflip, and they'll take the little minis and go, woo, and they'll act it out. But if you want to try that in a virtual environment, you're really going to be limited to what that virtual environment will allow you to do. And I cannot see it being programmed with an infinite number of possible, things that the player wants to do. So it's going to be limited. Also, I do think they are really purposefully moving away from a DM-driven game. I mean, that's a no-brainer. DMs are already sort of rare to begin with. It's not that they're rare. It's just, most people don't want to be DM. They want to play, right? DM takes work. And so I think that them going to this AI DM, this artificial DM, that'll come up with adventures for you. It's good. Great. Whatever. Do I think that it's going to have the variation and the variety that a real DM can offer you? No. You're going to be limited to the adventures that the programmers provide, or it'll be repetitive. It'll be almost like World of Warcraft. You have to go on a quest and go gather 16 of these supplies. We'll bring those back and trade them for this, and then you can take that item and go deliver it to this person to get a quest. And you'll go in the dungeon, and it'll be sort of like Diablo 2 or Diablo 3, where you go in the dungeon, you kill as many creatures as you can, get to the end, trigger the trap, and boom, you succeeded. You level up, and you do it all over again. The variety, I cannot see the variety being there. Now, I hope I'm wrong. I mean, I'm not kidding. I hope I am wrong, because I don't want D&D to fail. I want D&D to be around for my grandkids, and it will be for my grandkids if I have anything to do with it. It'll just be my version of D&D, and they'll be learning how to play my version. So, but I'm talking about D&D. When I'm gone, when all these older gamers are gone, and nobody's around to teach the old school, I hope that whatever D&D version is out there is acceptable to them. I hope that, part of the argument is they won't know any better, so whatever they get, they're going to love. Well, that's kind of sad. I'm hoping that there will always be DMs that are willing to run the old school type game and give players that experience, so that experience is not lost. All right, so I'm rambling a little bit, but I am getting to a point, and here's my point. So we started talking about, well, we're not going to, are you going to play D&D? Yes. Are you going to play it? No. Are you going to play? When I got to me, I was like, well, I'm always open to a game of D&D if it's all there is. If I'm at a convention and that's all I can play, well, I guess I'm playing D&D. But I'm very fortunate in that I not fortunate may not be the word. I am very open to all games. There's not many games that I'm not willing to try once. And because of that, I have discovered games in my lifetime that I really enjoy more than D&D. And I know that sounds blasphemous, but, there are games I like to play more than D&D. And I'm going to play them. I am getting ready to start a campaign, or not a campaign. I'm going to start a regular game of Alien RPG. Because I love that universe. I love the whole alien, the space, cowboy kind of, the working man kind of thing. I love that, and I want to play it. And I love the rule set, by the way. The mechanics of Alien RPG are just incredible. If you're not familiar with it, grab the basic starter set, which is probably like $20, I'm guessing, and it gives you an adventure, and it gives you the dice and the cards and everything you need to play it, and just play it. And if you play it, you be honest with me and tell me that you don't like it. I'm telling you, the first time I played it, I thought this is the most incredible mechanic ever. And I want to play Alien all the time, but that's not the way. If you play the game, you'll understand why that's not easy to do. Alien RPG is not really meant to be played as a campaign. You can have ongoing characters, but the strength of Alien lies in what it calls its cinematic option, where you're playing a 2-hour, 3-hour movie. And that's where I feel that Alien RPG really, where its strength is. So anyway, I'm telling you this because if you're looking for a new game to play, you couldn't go wrong with Alien RPG. Now, I have been a long-time fan of Call of Cthulhu. I mean, obviously, I'm painting a Cthulhu board game miniature here. I love the Cthulhu universe, setting, everything about it. So I am currently putting together my take on how I'm trying to figure out how I can introduce it at the gaming store, and if it's going to be able to be continued. Because a lot of people don't like Call of Cthulhu. Either that, or they have a vague understanding of what it's about, and they're just not sure they want to try it. That's cool. I have no problem with that. But I am trying to prep a game for that. And then finally, another friend of mine, Trevor, sort of reminded me how much I enjoy a game called Monster of the Week. And so I'm going to get Monster of the Week going. And that one's fun because it is a campaign. It just, every week it's some new monster, right? I mean, that's how you play it. So stay tuned. I'm going to give you more about that. But I want my fellow players out there to understand I'm not anti D&D. I'm not anti Wizards. I'm not happy with the way Wizards has sort of shaken things up recently and caused a lot of stress in our community. Those decisions came from on high. They didn't come from, I think, people that love the game at Wizards. I think a lot of the decisions that were made that caused stress were from people who probably have never played Dungeons and Dragons, or they're just business people and they don't care. It's the dollar amounts, that they're looking at. And listen, that's what they were hired to do. Wizards hired them to make Hasbro more money, and so that's what Hasbro wants. But what a company wants may not necessarily be in line with what the community wants. And the community will typically lose. But so eventually will the company, because if the community disappears, the company is going to disappear. So my response to my friends was, I'm kind of done with D&D. I'm kind of done with 5e. I have a bunch of 5e books on my shelf over there. I haven't cracked them in a long time. I've sold off a lot of 5e stuff, but some of it I've kept just for nostalgia. My players gave me a collector's the 3 books in this collector edition, the Dungeon Master's Guide, Player's Handbook, Monster Bread. They gave me that one time as a thank you, and it's a huge. It's beautiful. I love the covers, and I'll keep that for always. But I've sold off most of my adventures. I've sold off a lot of accessories that I bought to make the game go smoother and things like that, mainly because I just don't anticipate playing 5e anymore. Now, will I play D&D 1 or 1D&D? Probably not. But you know what? I never say never. I might be in the store one day and watch a game going on, and there might be something going on where I go, holy cow, what have I done? Shot myself in the foot. I don't think that's going to happen. I think 1D&D is close enough to 5e. They're supposed to be compatible that I'm sort of done with those mechanics. I'm done with the complexity of 5e. And if you think 5e isn't complex, I know. Pathfinder, everybody says Pathfinder's more complex. But with 5e, listen, it's just crazy to calculate DCs and when I have to have a player explain a spell and read it back to me twice so that I can maybe grasp what is actually going on here, the game has gotten too complex. When you're adding 6 different modifiers to come up with the final modifier, and then that modifier can be totally thrown out by somebody's, some other ability or some feat that just ignores it. You do all this work as a DM and then it's gone. It's like, oh, I can just negate that. Oh, okay, well, that's fine. 5e just sort of, it got on my nerves with how nitpicky it was and how easy it was to shut things down, but also just how much of it was bloat. What they call feature, that's not the word I'm looking for. In the software industry, when you keep adding things to it, there's a term for it, and somebody will help me with it, but it's something like feature bloat or something along those lines. But that's where 5e felt like it was, and it still feels that way. So I'm done with it. And it's driven me to revisit some of my other games that I never play or I rarely play, and it's inspired me to want to play them again. So here's my challenge to you. If you love D&D, keep playing it. But if you're kind of tired right now of all the drama and intrigue going on, take a break. Look at your shelf and see if there's any other RPGs on there that you'd really like to play, and do it. Call your friends or email them and say, hey, Wednesday night or Friday night, we're playing this game. I'll be the GM or whatever, the keeper, the referee, whatever you want to call it. Come on, let's play a new game. Let's try a new game. You just never know that you may find a game that you haven't played in a long time that all of a sudden it just clicks with where you are right now. Or you may play it and the players and you may go, well, that was fun, but you know what? Let's go back to the dungeons. Hey, whatever floats your boat. All right, Fatima's done. I had to go look up the pronunciation. It was Fatima. Fatima is done, except for her gold jewelry, which I will hand paint once this paint is fully dried. But she turned out really good. I'm really pleased. I'll take some close-up pictures and append them to the end of this video. All right, that's all I have for this Let's Paint a Mini video. I'll be back again soon. I'm going crazy, just loving painting all my minis, using my speed paints. I have got so many miniatures primed and ready to paint that there's a never-ending supply of these videos coming. So if you like them and you want me to keep doing them, please let me know. If you're getting sick of them, tell me. I'll probably continue to do them, but if enough people say we hate it, I'm just going to stop. I'll still paint minis. I just won't get on and chat with you and ramble and anything about you. All right, so that's all I got. This is Jim, the Tabletop Engineer. Thanks for joining me as I painted up Fatima, and I'll be back very soon with a new painting video. Until then, everybody, take care.